What is up everyone, welcome back to Article of the Week. Today we'd be dissecting a very important article that I read, and it's known as Crisis as Freedom, and then it goes on to talk about the philosophy of Sir Mohammad Iqbal, the famous Pakistani scholar and the famous Pakistani philosopher. And we can also say that he was a Hindustani scholar, if I may say so, because by the time Iqbal died, Pakistan had not been formed. So we can simply say that he was a South Asian Muslim philosopher. Besides that, we also have Walter Benjamin, who was a very famous German Jewish philosopher, and it is basically an article that talks about their take on the notion of time. Now we do understand that there is different kind of understanding whenever we talk about time pertaining to different cultures. So Iqbal goes ahead and he criticizes the Asharite school of Sunni theology, and he says that they believe in the idea of atomic time. Now, what does atomic time mean? Atomic time basically talks about these individual moments of time which are, once you lay them out in a singular line, they form sort of like a linear chain. Now, once there are linear chains, you notice that there is some kind of a space between my thumbs, right? And that is what Iqbal points out. He says that if there are atoms of time, right, if there are particles of time which all have been laid out properly in a singular straight line, then this necessitates that there has to be difference, there has to be some kind of a space between these individual atoms, right? And this is what Iqbal criticizes. He says that this is a very atomist time, this is a very atomist viewpoint of time, and instead he focuses on the idea of organic time or true organic time. Now this is something which I also found to be very similar to Taoist philosophy, but that is an article for another day, right? So what Iqbal argues is that the way we should be viewing time is in the idea of organic time. And what organic time is, that it is basically that there is a supreme ego out there, and that of course means God to Allama Iqbal. The reason for that is that Iqbal himself was a theist, he was a Muslim. So Iqbal says that there is a supreme ego out there who has created infinite possibilities out there, and the limited ego or the normal ego, which is mankind, is simply inhabiting one of them. It's almost like Doctor Strange looking at multiple timelines in Endgame, for example. There are multiple timelines out there and we are simply inhabiting one of them. So Iqbal got there pretty fast, to be very honest. I mean, much quicker than Doctor Strange, I must say. And one more thing that Iqbal points out is that whenever we read the Quran, it continuously asks us to recall a time, to recall the incidents, but we were not necessarily there when there were prophets around, right? So how can we recall the time? Well, Iqbal says that this just goes on to show that humanity is basically an eternal dialogue with God, and in a sense everything that has always happened has been happening forever. This is simply eternity. This is how he presents it. So mankind is at a very weird juxtaposition of being in serial time as well, that is the time as we perceive it, and also being scattered throughout eternity as well. And he talks about how before the fall of man, before the fall of Eden, he was at a very indistinguished place. He was at a place which is known as Eden, which is different from Islamic conception of paradise. So Eden is considered to be a station that is somewhat between earth and between heaven. That is how I perceive it personally. And we were there, but the thing was that we were at that point completely indistinguishable from our environment, because everything there was in Allah's accordance. Everything that was happening was as per the wishes and wills of God. Now what happened is that we disobeyed. He told us to not eat the fruit, and we all know that Adam alayhi salam, or Adam, however you want to say it, went ahead and ate the fruit. We know that happened, and that was the first act of disobeying. It's not known as the first act of rebellion, because I'd still say that was Satan himself. And in Christianity people call it the original sin, but let's just not use the word here for multiple purposes, which we may be able to highlight in some future discussions, inshallah. But now when we talk about this, we realize that mankind actually disobeyed God. Now this was a quintessential crisis. This crisis is what liberated us. The fall of man is the very reason man can actually be good. Have you ever heard saying that an angel is good or an angel is bad. No, an angel is an angel. He does not have free will, right? He cannot be good, he cannot be bad. He is simply operating on, you can say that he's operating on an algorithm that cannot be changed, it cannot be manipulated. So what makes man so much different from an angel is that man must inhabit a space where he has already disobeyed God, and now he has the chance to win, his favors back by sort of doing the right thing. But you can also go and get much worse if you continue on doing the wrong things, and then Iqbal also goes ahead and defines what it means to be good. You're good only as long as you're choosing, when you have the freedom to choose. I mean, of course, if you're choosing to forgive somebody, then that means you're good. But what if you're too weak to extract any form of revenge? Then you're not being good, you're just being weakless, right? So basically, it turns us back to the age-old adage, right, that a man is good only as long as he is dangerous enough to get revenge, right? A good man is a very powerful man who keeps his anger under voluntary check. That is how we may pronounce it. And we also see these kinds of philosophies develop in Walter Benjamin in response to Nazism. Iqbal developed it against British imperialism. Both of them really focused upon the aspect of time. It was really obtuse to them that once the past is gone, it cannot be reconfigured or anything like that. They continuously said that in light of present information, the past continues to change. And that is what Iqbal also believed about the future. He believed that it would be limiting for God if we prescribe that he has already ordained a certain set of incidents to occur, right? So we completely agree that he knows all the possible, and perhaps as absurd it may sound, he may even know the things that cannot happen, that can never happen, that are impossible. And that is the kind of knowledge that God possesses, or he possesses as per Iqbal. So even though he may know it, he has not limited them in any way. Like, we can inhabit any sort of timeline we want. So basically, our choices matter. It's just that there are, like, imagine it as an MCQ paper, all right? There are multiple choice questions out there. We can make any choices, but there are infinite number of options. Now, of course, even if there are infinite number of options there, the person who set the paper knows all the options. Of course, you have the freedom to choose. But can you actually choose outside of the scope of the knowledge of God, the one who set the paper? Can you actually choose an option that simply does not exist, right? I mean, there are other options that can have been there, and surely the examiner knows it. For example, he could have given another choice as your as one of your choices, another name or another answer as one of your choices. He chose not to give that, but he knew that he could have given that. So not only does he know all the choices that you can make, he also knows all the choices that you cannot make, because he simply did not give them in the answer. So it's a difficult thing to wrap your head around, but once you get the hang of it, it really eases itself out. Benjamin, on the same hand, also talks about how it is important for us to remember the past, and he gives the example of how Torah asks its followers to remember the past, right? How the prayers talk about the past. They're not so much concerned with the future. They say that the future will mend itself if we do in the present what is necessarily right as guided by our past, and hence the present in light of the past gets a new meaning, or gets a whole new importance as compared to the future. So not only does the past influence the present also continues to influence the past, because our current experiences, they continue to shape the way we view the past. And how many times has it happened to you that you were very angry at the way things turned out, but then when you look back now, you sort of think that whatever happened, it happened for a good reason, it was the right way to go. So this is what Walter Benjamin and Allama Iqbal try to talk about here. They really stress that it is not the time for us to be bogged down by worrying about the future too much. We must set our foot firm, and we must set our foot in the light of our past, and we must set it in the light of intellectual discussion. That's all for this one, guys. I will see you next Sunday. Take care.